While I'm still waiting on Dragon Age the Veilguard to come out this year, I'm looking back at the previous games. When I began playing Inquisition, finally, I was very impressed by the graphics this time around. There was little to no hair in the character creator, but I made do. It was fine. It looked good, and I saw Cassandra. She was pissed. It was glorious. And then there was a green aurora borealis in the sky. Everyone was mad at my character for causing it. Granted, she had just come out of the Fade after a massive explosion blew up some building atop a mountain, and I had made her a mage, so I thought she was maybe responsible for that explosion, and that now she was subject to Cassandra's Inquisition. But that was not it. I was so wrong. The Inquisition story and writing were worse than Dragon Age 2 in my opinion. I know this game is beloved by many. For me, however, it was a bit of a letdown. We are once again in the role of the hero, chosen to save the world from a big baddie, but this time we are the only one in that position, which is fine in theory. In practice, it was somewhat two-dimensional. Corypheus is not the most intriguing villain. And by comparison, sure, we can say that the Darkspawn in Origins were just mindless, faceless villains, but that was the point of them. There was no negotiating or bargaining. It's not even a case of Corypheus wanting to change how mages are treated in the South, out of some sense of duty or respect for mages, or even because he wants to recruit them for Tevinter. Corypheus is just an ambitious Tevinter mage, drunk on power that conveniently has his fingers in every major quest that your MC is currently on. It was a little too convenient. It really flipped my expectations. It also didn't help that he was very easily defeated in the end. I expected a mage versus Templar rebellion, which was set up in Dragon Age 2 and arguably in Dragon Age Origins. But in my opinion, Corypheus was a very cop-out villain to write. Oh, one of the racist Tevinter mages with their horrible slavery ideals for their country. Yeah, it sounds very mustache-twirly, and it only highlights just how shallow it was. I was expecting an Inquisition, and it's really hard to understand why there was none. The organization itself that we see in the game is not an Inquisition. The definition of an Inquisition, based on what our own history has experienced, is that of an ecclesiastical tribunal for the suppression of heresy. Now, while there are scenes where the Inquisitor does sit in judgment, it is not against heresy, but against Corypheus' helpers and whatever his plan is. We could argue that Corypheus wanted to enter the Black City in the Fade and become a god, essentially dethroning the Maker, but we are never told that specifically in the game. We don't even know if there is a Maker on the throne, to be fair. Thedas has many quote-unquote gods, or godlike figures that could realistically in this world be this maker, but it's not a certainty. The Chantry faith is very much like real-life religious faiths. You just believe. So in this sense, the game's Inquisition isn't anything religious. Corypheus just wants to raise Tevinter to its former glory, which is another vague thing in his plan. What is that glory? Why is it better than the way Tevinter is now? It's such a free place for mages already that it makes no narrative sense that he'd just attack a certain territory to gain glory for his own country in the north. I think Corypheus was a very easy scapegoat to shove all the conflict of the game onto, and ultimately it was far less interesting than what I had imagined. It really did feel like such a missed opportunity. Even the demons just became mindless brutes, hacking and attacking anything that moved. Gone were the subtle manipulators of Origins and even Dragon Age 2. Those demons had more depth, and it made so much sense that they could set mages astray with promises of power, freedom, or whatever other temptations. For all of Vivian's snide comments about pride demons trying to lead one astray, the pride demons in Inquisitions are more likely to bash your head in than try to talk you into doing blood magic. They honestly just became Darkspawn 2.0, violently charging and attacking. I really thought an Inquisition would have something to do with how the mages and Templars are structured in society. Morrigan was someone I imagined as a target of this Inquisition. But we never get that. So what's left? What is the actual story of Dragon Age Inquisition? Well, We, as the main character, are sent to this Templar mage conclave where negotiations are to take place for the war that's been going on between them since a major incident in Dragon Age 2. Depending on the background chosen, you are there as either a neutral party that was hired for protection, a spy, a representative of the noble family of Trevelyan, or as a delegate to the conclave. This conclave gets destroyed, along with the building that it took place at, which coincidentally is the Temple of Sacred Ashes. The only survivor of this attack is our character, who wakes up in the Fade, runs out towards an exit where a radiant figure reaches out to help them. Once outside, your character falls unconscious, and when you wake up, you are a prisoner. So the peace talks go very badly, and this green aurora borealis in the sky is actually a tear in the veil through which demons come out. You wake up with this green mark on your hand that reacts to whatever the tear is doing in the sky, which throws you in the suspicious pile. I admit the hook was good. You now have to collaborate with these people to find out what happened at the conclave, who blew it up, who this radiant figure was, if it was Andraste, and why you have a mark that closes tears or rifts in the veil. What followed, though, was an endless list of fetch quests, with little to no logic attached to it. The fact that you are appointed the title of Inquisitor with all its responsibilities is honestly ridiculous. The only one that could have held that title and have it make sense would have been a Trevelyan Inquisitor. Elves, as we established in 2 previous games, are either slaves or servants who live under segregation rules and laws. Dwarf are so secluded they don't understand how the sky works. Qunari are essentially invaders, and so different in their cultural beliefs that it makes it awfully awkward to appoint one to such a high-ranking and religiously important rank, even if this particular Qunari broke away from the Qun. But anyway, an endless list of fetch quests, where you, as the head of the Inquisition, have to gather ram meat for refugees that you have to hunt yourself, then bring them blankets and kiss babies maybe, I don't know. You close rifts in the veil, get allies to help you fight Corypheus, and without going into major spoilers, that's about it. Later on, we find out that Corypheus is not exactly the mastermind villain he was presented as. That wasn't the only surprise though. And that's it, you finish the game, and you get a major reveal after that, and then it's over. Or is it? The game without any DLC is very bare bones, repetitive in its twists where a major group or an organization does something shady, and it all turns out to be under the influence of Corypheus. And he would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling... sorry. Besides the Temple of Mythal, the Orlesian court heist quest, or the Sunken City on the Storm Coast, most other quests are not as well designed and written. I do remember the Grey Warden's quest, but felt somewhat betrayed by how they decided to make them dumbasses that followed this lunatic's plans, again under the influence of Corypheus. The dragon scene was cool, I'll give them that, but everything else paled in comparison. Every other quest wasn't as impactful or as memorable, until the DLCs rolled out. Listen, I don't know what went down in the writing or design rooms for this game, but they should have encouraged more of what we got from the DLCs in terms of story, graphics, and game design. The Descent was a claustrophobic murder mystery that showed us some parts of the deep roads we had never seen before. It opened up a door to the dwarves' origins and mythology that, albeit left us on a cliffhanger, again, this is becoming a theme, gave us a good story. It got me very invested in dwarven lore. It piqued my curiosity. Jaws of Hakkon was a beautiful, tragic story where we uncover more about the history of the Inquisition and what role an elf had in it. This was particularly relevant to my game because I played an elf and even had a matching Valas Lane to boot. One of the only dragon battles that was remotely memorable to me was in this DLC. Both had a contained story with a clear goal. This gave me so much joy, not having to aimlessly go about the map, checking boxes on a quest log. The only downside that I can see with these two DLCs is that they don't serve the main quest line, that of dealing with Corypheus and the Rift. The best written stories with the most contrasting graphics and environments, and they were merely side quests, entirely separate from the main story. A pity, but a well-deserved break from the monotony of the main quest. Trespasser was the best DLC. It takes place after the main quest, but it was phenomenal. The setting for it mirrors the Orlesian heist quest I mentioned before. We finally discover what that mirror that Merrill was on about is actually for. We uncover so much elven lore. The environments are beautiful, haunting, and ingenious. Puzzles are crafted into these environments. They were so breathtaking and frustrating and satisfying. It all gets so much more nuanced and branched out with the Canary conspiracy and this mad dash to stop them until we reach a familiar face and get some answers. Solas's speech at the end was beautiful and beautifully acted and scary. We find out what the whole explosion in the beginning was about and what might happen in the future. We also find out that he was the main antagonist this whole time. Well, we had found out sooner, but our Inquisitor finds out now. It was heartbreaking. Even if you don't romance his character, it was a betrayal so deep that I wished I was given the option to punch him because I would have taken it. And this was a testament to the writing. Not the whole game's writing, but this particular story and his character. But alas, to get to this point, we have to go through the game's mechanics. Because I've played physical copies of Origins and Dragon Age 2 on an Xbox console, the same was true with Inquisition in my first playthrough. I have the physical discs for all of them, and with Inquisition it was very painful. The combat mechanics was a pain to go through and it was lacking in variety, but the thing that got me even more annoyed was the war table mechanic. You have these missions that you have to perform on this war table, and for some reason, some of them take more than 24 hours. The annoying part of this was that time would not pass if, say, the game wasn't playing. So I spent so much time waiting on these damn war table missions because they block progression of the story. You cannot go to a different location because you need influence, and to do that, you need to complete missions in the field to then take on these war table missions. It was, for lack of a better word, stupid. It dragged the game up so much that I was considering quitting. Luckily, I blessedly found a way to speed up those missions by altering the date on my console and make it seem like the time had passed already. I'm not even gonna mention how much time I got lost in the hinterlands. That shit was the biggest time suck. I didn't even care about any beautiful landscapes anymore. I was just tired of being stuck and aimless. The idea of needing political influence isn't something new in Dragon Age. We've done this before. We either helped someone or a group of someone's, and they agreed to help us out in turn. A favor for a favor. That's how it worked. How we got political influence or created alliances. But this time, we just go around the map and establish camps to engage in some light form of imperialism, coveting resources and closing rifts. By doing all this, the Inquisitor gets influence points and perks and reputation that will eventually be used to open up new areas where you can just repeat this whole process all over again. This is just the basic thing that you need to do. There are so many unnecessary things to collect, star puzzles to solve, skull telescopes to find and reveal meaningless locations. It all was very, very grindy. There is way too much grind in this game. The thing about establishing camps would have worked way better as a form of conquest than to close rifts or uncover the map. I understand you need to deal with the tear in the veil, but these little stray breaches were designed to make the players grind and put endless hours into mash button battles. After hours of doing this, I honestly forgot what the main goal even was in the hinterlands. As for the combat mechanics, well, besides it being just as flashy, if not more, than Dragon Age 2, we still have the pause feature, and I mostly used it to heal or drink potions because I could not get the tactical camera to show me anything on the battlefield. The feature of tactics is still there, but it looks like it will just do whatever it wants on its own. There is a new feature called behavior that should let you customize the actions of your companions, but I have no clue how to use it and just gave up after trying for a while. There was too much grind to do and I had no patience. And there is a skill tree that is very similar to the one in Dragon Age 2. This time, however, it will not let you choose any of your attribute points when leveling up, which was a bummer because that's something I always liked doing. I lost my patience with this game's mechanics a few times, but I pushed on because I was still fairly invested in the lore, parts of the story, and hopefully the characters if I ever got to see their stories. And still, the companions made the game enjoyable. Not all of them, but enough of them to make me grit my teeth and go do endless fetch quests in the hinterlands. I wanted to explore the companion's story a bit more. Cullen was back from Origins, and Liliana was there too. Varric was back, albeit in a more or less the same role as before. Cole was interesting, but he came so late in the game, I didn't make a big deal out of hanging out with him until I found out about his backstory, which honestly did make me tear up a little bit. Blackwall came with a new perspective on what it means to be a hero, based on how he saw the Grey Wardens as this ideal of heroism, and what he brought to the title. It was an interesting twist. Cassandra was the most valuable companion. Without her, my puny mage would have died multiple times. The biggest heavy hitter out of all the tanks, not even Iron Bull could compare. Iron Bull and Sarah were fine. I didn't spend that much time with them, so I didn't actually form any other opinion. Dorian, on the other hand, was the best companion for me. Sure, he was not romanceable for a female Inquisitor, but I still loved him as a friend. Vivian would have been more interesting if there was a little bit more of her. I did really enjoy her banter with Solus. It was interesting to see opposing views on how to handle magic and the Fade. But the biggest saving grace for me in Inquisition was Solus. And yes, I know, another gamer girl simping over an elf boy. Yeah, okay. But in my defense, I finally got to play an elf after Dragon Age 2, and I thought the quiet, nerdy elven man was perfect for her. Both mages in a world that distrusts and hates elves and mages. It was a perfect match. Until it wasn't, and he took my character's heart and stomped on it twice. Once when he just ended their relationship, and then another time when it was revealed that he was, and will be again, a major antagonist. I know I complain a lot about this game. It's only because I got attached to this world, its story and lore. I specifically rushed through the previous games to get to this one. And when I got to it, I was longing to replay Origins again, and even Dragon Age 2. There were so many nods to the previous games. When I realized that the building that was blown to pieces in the beginning was actually the Temple of Sacred Ashes, I thought it would have something to do with how this Inquisition was going to persecute mages. It's a significant place, not only because it was a prominent location in Dragon Age Origins, but because it's the most sacred place for the Chantry Fate. The optics for it at the very beginning was that either the Templars or mages, more likely the mages, decided to attack this conclave to stop peace negotiations. A copycat of what happened to start this whole conflict, something that could lead to a disastrous end for the mages' rebellion, and one that could have left them scrambled and hiding with numbers diminishing, whose remnants could now be subject to a cruel inquisition. But we didn't get that. We got an Ancient of Intermagister who lost his magic ball that might have given him power. Closing straggler rifts would have been so much more impactful if there was a story attached to them. Like, what if one of these rifts had opened on top of an inn filled with refugees and the demons spilling out had taken over their minds? You, as the Inquisitor, could have had to deal with these demons to free the people and close it off in an epic battle whose consequences could have very well been the death of all those people. Succeed and you get better renown and influence as the leader of the Inquisition. There surely must have been a better way to convey the mechanics of influence than to send the player to randomly close a bunch of rifts or make camp or get resources. I don't know, it all felt cold and more like a to-do list than an engaging, story-driven BioWare game. I consider Inquisition's ending to be a cliffhanger, even after Trespasser, and it honestly felt like deja vu. Dragon Age 2 also ended with an NPC doing something terrible and leaving the story on a cliffhanger. There is this general consensus that the original gamers who played Origins back when it first came out are somewhat outdated in their thinking that either Dragon Age 2 or Inquisition are not as great. Oftentimes nostalgia is brought up to justify this feeling, like they long for the good old days of I'm not exactly sure what, evoking this boomer-esque image in more recent players' minds. As one of those new players, I fall on the side of the original gamers and fans. I didn't play Dragon Age back in the day. I binged them all in a few months, and the quality dipped more and more with each installment. I'm not sure what this new one will bring, but I'm not exactly confident in it, based on what I saw. Yes, the trailer was god-awful, and yes, the gameplay footage was better, up until the combat started and the silly writing began showing its head. Even so, I can work through my issues with the combat system and mechanics. I've done so in the past. I just need the story to be good. I really hope the story is good. Time will tell how this story will end, but we might not have to wait too long.